Hey, Rachel, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Kate.
I'm so excited to chat. We have Angie Trueblood in common, and she was on the show. We were just saying, I'm like months ago, years ago. I don't know what time is anymore, but I'm so glad that she connected us. And I'm so excited to chat with you about entrepreneurial poverty, especially with women. This is such a real thing that I can so relate to. And I know so many people listening can too.
Yes, I'm so excited to dive into it because I think this past year has shown us just how fragile a lot of businesses are and how something like what we've all experienced in the pandemic, it's not only shaken the world of traditional work where we saw so many women leaving the workplace, but it has really shaken the foundation for a lot of women business owners.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of scary. And if I think too much about it, sometimes I get really raging mad about it. And that's not a great place to be. Although I know sometimes anger is like what we need to spur change. But let's back up and give everybody kind of your story. Tell us who you are, and then let's dive into this topic.
Perfect. So, for everyone, if you are meeting me for the very first time, or maybe you've known me for a while and you came over to just hear about this conversation, I have been in the business space for a long time. I started off in corporate consulting, which I think is the path most MBAs go to. They either go to finance or corporate consulting. And a lot of us get there and then realize it is a machine designed to grind you into absolute
Oblivion.
nothingness.
Yeah.
It is exhausting. And that's what happened to me. I was in the corporate consulting world. I was driving between Atlanta, Georgia, and Washington, D.C., seeing clients in person on the ground. They were considered small business clients, but by that definition, it meant they had less than like 200 employees and they were making multiple millions of dollars. But at that point, I was completely hitting burnout, which is a story I hear for a lot of women. We get into these career paths, we've checked all the boxes, right? Like we've done all of the good girl things we were told to do. We went to
Mhm.
college, check, got the master's degree, check, had a great salary, check, bought our first car, check, got married to the handsome husband, check, check, check. And then you realize you're miserable. And that's what
Yes.
and I found myself in my brand new Toyota Prius on the side of I-95 coming back from a client in Washington, D.C., and I had my first panic attack. And I literally thought I was dying. I was like, oh my God, I am 26 and I'm going to die on the side of the highway. And I didn't know a
That
lot
wasn't
about
part
what
of your checklist.
that was not part of the checklist. And it got so bad that in the summer of 2008, I had 10 panic attacks in 10 weeks. I had never
Oh,
experienced this. And I went to my boss and I said, I am scared that I am going to hurt myself having these. I don't know what is happening. And
yeah.
so I took a medical leave of absence. I went on disability, short term disability for 3 months, and kind of went through the accelerated track of therapy and coaching and counseling. And what really happened was I ended up on a yoga mat. And I've always been a yoga practitioner, but I found this studio that I absolutely loved here in Richmond, Virginia. And I was on my yoga mat every single day. And my teacher, Arlene, and I became very close. And she became my like de facto life coach, basically, my yoga teacher, my life coach. And she said to me, she was like, I know you're really questioning going back to consulting and what'll happen when this is over. Do you think you could help me with my business? At that point, she had been in business for like a year and a half, and had opened it like many women entrepreneurs do because she loved to teach yoga, because she loved what she was doing and she wanted to create a space and a community around it. And I was like, oh, it was like this huge light bulb moment for me when I realized, oh, I have a very unique skill set. And here is this business owner who otherwise would never have access to a consultant like me
Mhm.
because it was not targeted towards owner operated business owners. And if she were to go to the local SBA or the local SCORE group, or local chamber of commerce, those people didn't really understand what she was trying to do with her business. It didn't
Right.
fit. And so I was like, intrigued by that. And I said, okay, Arlene, let's see. And I started asking her all these questions, like, can I see your P&L? What is your occupancy rate? Like, how many people do you need per class to break even per class? What is your profit margin? And she was just like,
I've
I
never thought about any of this before.
never thought about any of this before. And that's when I was like, this is my opportunity. That was my opening. And that was all I needed to say, okay, I'm not going back to corporate. I can help business owners like this who are people that I really care about. They're doing work that I think is super important. And they just need someone like me behind the scenes to help them have the bigger, strategic questions answered so that they could move forward. Because the reality is, as I started doing the research, I saw this more and more. Most of these owner operated businesses were opening and closing within a matter of 2 years. And they didn't have the support they needed to move forward. And the biggest reasons is a lot of them were self-funded. And
Mhm.
because they were self-funded, they were often putting themselves at high financial risk that they really couldn't take. I mean, they were taking out everything from their 401k. They were borrowing against their house. These are not people who had money available to dump tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars into a business, but they were so passionate they were doing it anyway. And if that business didn't succeed, then they truly were at square one again. And that was really scary.
Yeah.
And so as I just got to know her and started helping her with her studio, we took it from being something that was not profitable to something that was super profitable within a few months. And because that was such a small community, like a lot of small communities, she had other friends who were yoga teachers who were paying attention and they were like, what is happening? And
Mhm.
so we hosted the very first workshop together. And I started explaining marketing and I started explaining financial basics and I started explaining business strategy and the things they should be thinking about. And that led to me starting my business, just taking that opening and walking right into it. And so fast forward, we're now on year, what is this, 13? Um, and unfortunately, Arlene passed in 2009 unexpectedly.
Oh my gosh, I'm
Um,
so sorry.
but she truly is the person who like kickstarted this whole journey for me. She put me on this new path and gave me the opening. And I'm just doing my best to continue the legacy she had, which was to help women, especially, to become happier and healthier and do things that are in alignment with their purpose. So that's kind of how I started. And these days, I am not just working with yoga teachers. I have, as I've gone on, attracted a lot of like-hearted entrepreneurs, women who believe in yoga or holistic health and wellness, or who are creative entrepreneurs, all women who have a mission bigger than them. They are doing this not because they're trying to have mansions on the beach or drive a Lamborghini, but because they're trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah. Thank you so much. What a powerful story. And I can relate to so much of it. I also struggled with panic attacks. And like you, I feel like, mine was very much my body screaming at me that
Yep.
you must stop doing what you're doing. It's not working. And when you finally do stop and listen, it's like, I was going to say the floodgates open. I don't feel like that's the right analogy, but it's just like, oh my gosh, all these other opportunities show up that are so much more aligned and feel so much better and work so much better for you in your life. So I'm glad that that was the trajectory that you took. And I know in the moment, I'm sure it felt like you were dying and
Yes, absolutely. I was like, I'm having a heart attack. Is this supposed to happen in your 20s?
right.
No,
Yes, I can so relate to that. And I think a lot of women listening, even if they haven't had the full blown panic attack experience, can, at least relate to the way that I'm working is not working. And like you, I think that's one of my biggest missions now. And it's something I've gotten clearer and clearer on, especially this last year as well, is wanting to help women create a business that works for them. Like, we're all set up. The patriarchy has been going on for thousands of years. Like, we are set up to work for men. And that is not the masculine model isn't really serving anybody at this point, but
no.
least of all, women who are still responsible for raising their kids and maintaining their household and also running their business, and it's a lot, and I think women end up feeling like they have to choose one or the other. Like, I can have a business or I can have a family or a life, and I just want I want to give women the opportunities like, no, you can have both. And it doesn't mean that you're burning grinding it into the ground every day in order to do it.
Absolutely. And that's why when I talk about entrepreneurial poverty, I see this happening in so many different ways for women, especially. We have the financial aspect of it, where generally women owned businesses are just not earning what male owned businesses are earning. And if you're a woman of color, the
Mm.
statistics are even lower. So out of all of the small businesses in the world, or not in the world, in the US, I should say, the stats I have are US based mostly. So all of the small businesses in the US, women own 44% of them, but we only make 4% of small business revenue.
Wow.
That is not make any sense to me. Like, why is this
Yeah.
happening?
Why? That's my question. Why do you think
Why is this
that is?
happening? And I think when we start breaking it down, there's so many factors at play here, right? We're less likely to go after capital. Men are much more likely to go after outside investment, whether it's taking out a business loan or finding outside investors. Women get way less investing. We're much more likely to bootstrap family and friends, credit cards, take out all the debt on ourselves, or just try to fund it as we go. We're much more likely to do that. And that,
Why do you think that is?
I think there's an education gap there.
Mm.
We often don't even think that we can get it, and we never try. We also, women generally don't talk about money,
Mhm.
and men do. If you're in a room full of male entrepreneurs, they are talking about where they got funding. They're talking about, oh, this SBA loan is available. Did you go get this? And I just don't see that happening in the rooms that a lot of women are in. They're not talking about this. And there's a lot of stigma around money. There's a lot of money mindset things that women have that I don't think men experience as much.
Yeah,
And that
I'm
puts
thinking
us at a
like,
huge disadvantage.
yeah, for sure. Not to mention just that women are told that we should be able to do it all ourselves.
Yep.
And like that message definitely permeates into business as well. Like it's not just that we shouldn't have like house help or cleaners or you know
And that's another thing.
childcare and things like that. Like we should be able to just do it ourselves. And then I'm sure then you start a business and you think, no, I should just be able to do it myself. This is what I've been told my entire life.
Well, there's a great book. It's probably in my backpack here. Um, I think her name is Valerie Reed, Dr. Valerie Reed, called
Yeah, she's been on the
Patriarchy,
show.
Patriarchy Stress Disorder. And I loved how she talked about, when you think about the role of money with women, we were only recently able, as late as the 80s, was when we had permission to go get a business loan ourselves.
Which is so effing infuriating.
Which means when my mom had her business, my mom was a business owner, she could not go out and get a business loan until the mid 80s. What? Are you kidding me? And only a decade before that could we even get credit cards.
Right. So I
So,
feel like there's
so
the
much conditioning that we're fighting
so
against.
much conditioning. And
Yeah.
then there's even still like people who I'm thinking like even in my own life who are good people, but they think oh, women make less because they just don't ask for what they need. And it's like, well, why aren't they asking? Like, let's not like don't blame the first symptom, go back further than that. It's not just that we're too dumb to ask or, like
Yep.
that we don't know. It's all of this conditioning that's been going on forever.
It's what I've heard termed the good girl syndrome. Like we're told we should be grateful for what we get.
Yes.
And that is our conditioning, is to just anything you get, be grateful. Don't negotiate, don't ask for more, don't seek out more. Whatever you get is good enough. But this is just perpetuating the entrepreneurial poverty, because what tends to happen is not only are our businesses undercapitalized, which means they're growing slower, we don't have the resources we need to hire a team, we don't have the resources we need to invest into our infrastructure of our business, but then we end up paying ourselves less. So as of, I think it was the Amex 2019 Women in Business study, They said only 12% of women-owned small businesses were breaking the six-figure mark. So there's a lot of people out there who are like, why are we talking about six-figure business, blah, blah, blah. You know what? If your business isn't breaking six figures, you are lucky if you're taking home $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
In most areas of the country, that is not enough of a salary to support a family. And even if you're a dual income household, that is really hard. Like the research is showing when you add up what it really takes to live a comfortable lifestyle in this country and also be able to pay for healthcare, which is rising exponentially, put aside money for your retirement, pay for college, rising exponentially. I'm in the process right now of helping care for my elderly parents. It's six figures a year to have a parent who needs full-time nursing care.
Yeah.
So we have to let go of some of these money stories because a six-figure business is not a six-figure income. And for
Right.
most of us, if we are leaving the corporate professional world, then we need to replace that six-figure income. And that
And
means
it's not the equivalent, like you said, of,
yeah,
okay, in my corporate career, I made $120,000. So now I just need a business that makes $120,000. It's like, no, in order for you to still bring home $120,000, your business probably has to make like 250 plus, because
yep,
there's a lot of expenses and taxes and other things that are happening before you're paying yourself.
exactly. And if you want to take home 120,000 plus you want to fund your retirement,
Right.
don't have a match anymore. You got to create your own match. Plus, you're going to go out and pay for your health care, which is generally more expensive if you're not in a huge group program. Like those types of things start to add up. So suddenly, 250 isn't even thinking big enough. We need to think bigger. If you want to have a team who's supporting you, then we need to think bigger. And I think a lot of women have been told to play smaller and to
Mhm.
stay safe. And there also just aren't a ton of examples
Yeah.
of people for us to follow. Like this is the biggest challenge I've had in my own entrepreneurial journey. Once you break that first level, you hit that first six-figure mark and we're kind of told that six figures is the end game.
Mm.
And I'm like, no, that's
No.
just the first milestone
Yeah.
towards a long-term successful business. And there's just not many women to follow. If there's so few, only 12% who are making above that, only like 3% are in the $1 million range.
Mhm.
And we aren't seeing enough examples of what it looks like and what it actually takes. And it leads to other types of entrepreneurial poverty. It leads to time poverty because we are spread way too thin. And we have especially seen this over the last year. Like, how many of us had to completely overhaul our day because now we have kids at home, we have our spouse at home,
Good
everybody's at home.
Yeah,
And
everyone's home all the time.
And it's like a three-ring circus trying to pay attention to your business, plus keep the kids virtual schooling, plus your husband is now not understanding, like, just because I work from home doesn't mean I can stop everything to do virtual schooling. You actually have to participate in this scenario. It has led to a lot of women feeling like I don't have any time to really do the things I want to do to move the business forward, but also to do the things that I prioritize in my life.
Right.
And the only way that we can get more time is going to be to hire other people, which requires a bigger business, requires us thinking bigger about our business. And I remember when I started hiring people on my team, I was really nervous about that because I felt pressured. I felt this big pressure that, like, oh my gosh, this family is now depending on me to provide this paycheck.
Right.
And that felt big and scary. But once I realized, oh my gosh, if I can hire this person for 30 hours a week, that means I went from just my 30 hours a week to now we have 60 hours a week of people working on this mission. Oh wow, now it doesn't feel as hard. It's not feeling like it's all on me. I have people who are supporting me. And that's the only way that we can exponentially get more time. It's not to just be as productive as possible
Right.
because there's a
Yeah.
limit, right? Productivity will only take you so far. And again, the research shows that once you hit about 35 hours a week, you are pretty much tapped out. Your brain is not going to work as well. You're not going to be as creative. You're not going to get as much done. There's like a point once you hit 35 hours a week where we have limited return on the time that we're putting in.
Right.
So we have to build in that support. And if we don't, then it leads to the other major component of entrepreneurial poverty, which is lack of energy. And I know you've talked about this, Kate. We are in the middle of another epidemic of burnout,
Yeah.
of massive burnout. And this is one of the biggest reasons I think women end up giving up on their business, or they feel like it's just too much to try to grow beyond six figures, is because they equate growing the business with working harder.
Right.
And it's not about that.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
not about working harder. If we don't figure out how to build our business in a way that, I always talk with my clients, that is creating assets in the business that then do the work for you. If we can't do that, then we won't be able to grow. And then everything will depend on our efforting. And if
Right.
everything is depending on our efforting, well, then what do you do when, I mean, these are things that have happened to me in the past month. Your kid gets sick and wants you to stay home and watch movies with them because they don't feel good. You get a call from your mom who's in her late 60s and she fell and needs you to meet her at the ER because now they've got to do x-rays and make sure she didn't break her hip. Like, this happened to me in the last month. How do you keep up with all of those things if you don't have energy reserves to do it? You
Right.
can't. And chances are each and every one of us are going to have something that's going to require the energy of doing things that aren't related to business. And we can't do that if we're tapped out, if we're burned out. We're not going to have those reserves.
Yeah. Okay. This is so important. And I'm so glad we're talking about all of this. And my first thought is, yes, this is exactly why I actually created the program that I just launched this past month. We're recording this in March, so I'm not sure when this is going to air yet, but um, the incubator, because it was exactly about this energy reserves thing, and that growing your business does not mean working harder. And so one of the ways that I teach how to do this is by using evergreen funnels to sell your things. Stop live launching, stop having to, like, I love the way you said, like, more effort, stop efforting your business. Like, you can create these things that happen in the background on autopilot without you having to be there really ever. But certainly not on a day-to-day basis, certainly not having to show up live and plan all of the, there's so much that goes into live launches. So this is one of the ways that I think is kind of a solution to this burnout issue. But I'd love to hear what you think, some great, like, how can we build up these energy reserves? What does that look like?
Yeah. It's so funny because this past year really drove the point home to me. And I don't know if this happened to you in your community, but I found that I've always been talking about prioritizing self-care to my clients because I find women generally don't. We generally, we don't do it until we are like totally hitting the floor exhausted and we need to like tap out.
Yep.
So I've been talking a lot about this year to the point where my clients, they're like, you're the self-care CEO. All you tell us to do is like go rest and prioritize rest. We're talking so much about burnout and the impacts of burnout. And I think there's a lot that needs to happen in order to make sure you don't get to that point, right? So the first thing is we have to start looking at our business as a whole and make sure that there's infrastructure in place. What
Mhm.
I often find is people who are only focused on one aspect of their business and they're not thinking about the other areas of their business. So often we're focused a lot on, we hear the most, honestly, about marketing and sales. We hear the most about, here's how to grow your business. You're going to do all this marketing. You're going to put this system in place. You're going to have like evergreen and launches and funnels and all these things. And those are great, but those alone aren't enough. We also have to think about, what does our operations look like?
Mhm.
How are we going to effectively deliver what we have promised, right? And this is where I see a lot of bottlenecks happen for a lot of businesses. They get the evergreen engine in place, it's going really well, but then they end up with bottlenecks on the operation side because they're overwhelmed with too many clients.
Right.
And we have to remember that for each client relationship, there is an increase in overhead. Even if it's a scalable offer, even if it's a self-study offer, you will still have people emailing you in.
Yeah.
asking questions. You're still going to have to take care of each of those clients. Might not be as much as if it was a one-on-one product or service, but even
No,
things that
customer
are
service is
customer
real.
service is real and it can make or break your business.
Yep.
And if you're constantly finding yourself where your team does not know how to handle these things without asking you, they keep coming back to you to make decisions or to say, how should we handle this? How should we handle that? That is a major operations problem,
Yeah.
right? That means then there's something maybe in the delivery of that program or product that needs to be fixed. It might mean we need to train our team better and stop defaulting to like outsourcing for $10 an hour to answer questions in your inbox and actually get someone who's going to be a useful part of your team and
Yeah.
can take that role on 100% and answer 90% of the
Right.
coming
It's
in.
almost like the difference of contractors versus employees, where I always really prefer working with employees who are like full-time team members because they are involved in all aspects of the business. And so they're able to answer questions in a way that somebody who's just contracted out 10 hours a week, whatever it is, they're not attending your team meetings. They don't know what's
Yeah.
going on in the back end. So they get questions, and most of them, they're like, I don't know.
They don't know what's happening.
Right.
And that's one of the problems I see with especially the rise of like online business is there's been this whole 4-hour work week, mythology, and it is mythology. I just want to
Yes.
be really clear. It is mythology. If your team is all individual people who aren't communicating to each other, then it's going to lead to them all communicating to you and you having to manage all those people. And
Mhm.
that's another huge challenge we run into as we grow our teams is that we think, oh, I'm going to hire this person and this person and this person, and it's going to free so much of my time up. But then we end up frustrated because, oh, now I've got to manage all those people.
Yeah.
And
I made that mistake for sure of
right?
thinking, "Okay, great. This is gonna be awesome." I hired a copywriter, I hired an Instagram person, I hired a customer service person. I hired all these people. Now I don't have to do all this stuff. Problem solved. And then it was like, slow your roll. Now they're all coming to you at all hours
Asking
of the day
questions.
with questions and decisions. And I realized like now, yes, I've delegated the work, but I'm just like the decider. That's all I do all day is make more decisions and answer questions. So then it was like, okay, now I need to hire an operations manager to come in and they're going to manage this team because I can't do it and grow the business.
And it's not even just the management of it, it's making sure those people have ownership of their role
Right.
and the clarity is there around what is the vision for the business, what are we actually doing. Like a lot of those questions get answered if they truly feel ownership and they truly understand what you are focused on. But
Totally.
that's something that often I find we as the CEO, as the founder, it's all up here, right? It's all in our brain and we don't communicate it very effectively to everybody else on the team. And if
It's so hard to download your brain to your team.
it is
It's yeah.
it is so hard, but it is the skill set we all need to embrace. So my red flag for this, and you might see this outside of your business, my red flag for this is if you're hiring people and firing them very quickly. Like if
Mm,
you are churning through virtual assistants, then chances are it's not about them being a wrong fit. It's about you not knowing how to lead them. If you're
yeah.
churning through designers or copywriters or anybody in your team and you're just like, they're not getting it, they're not giving me the work I want, blah, 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 and you are just constantly churning through people, chances are the common denominator in this whole equation is you. And it's time to look at your leadership and are you actually looking at, okay, how am I setting these people up for success?
Right.
Do I have an onboarding process? Am I providing training? Are they really able to get to know the business? Do I have these things in place? I remember I kind of was against these at first because it felt so corporate and I had been so burned by corporate. I was like, I'm not doing any of these things. But then I sat down and I actually created a whole onboarding training for my new team members. And there's a really great book. I can't remember the name of it, but they talk about the Netflix culture deck.
Yeah.
And that was like, oh, this makes so much sense to me. So I started putting together, just like I would create a training for an online program, I created a training for my team. And I said, this is who we are. This is our mission. This is our vision. These are our clients. And I shared all the information, all the stats about our clients. Here are the programs. Here's each program and what it is, what it's about. Go read all the sales pages, go view the whole program, get
Yeah.
familiar with it. Here's our core values and here's how we act them out. Here's all of these different components that were in my head. And until I actually put it all in one place and literally just acted like this is a training for my team, just like a training for my clients, then it became, oh, I could get them up to speed so much faster.
Mhm.
And they felt more confident because they're like, oh, I understand what we're focused on, what the priorities are, how we are to show up as a team.
Yeah. And it is kind of painful in the beginning because you're so desperate for the help and you just want them to get started and like just okay, just hit the ground running. But it's so much better when you take even just a week, but ideally,
Yeah.
like 90 days of doing this. And not that you have to wait 90 days before you give them any assignments, but like that you're still onboarding them and training them and that's this slow startup so
Yep.
that like what's the expression? Like slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yep. Exactly. And these are the things that I find a lot of times we don't want to pause and do
Right.
because it feels like, but shouldn't I just throw them in? No, if you just throw them in, you're going to start churning through people
Mhm.
again and again. So
Yeah.
that's a huge area that I think we have to think about as we're growing the operations side, the team side. There's also a lot of financial things we need to be thinking about. If you don't have a good financial and legal team, especially once you're six figures and beyond, like that needs to become a priority because at that level, there is more at risk, and I have had this happen. I'm sure you've had this happen. You start to experience your first client who takes the program you ran and then decides they're going to go run the exact same the exact same program. I literally had to send a very strongly worded email to a former client who had literally ripped off my entire CEO retreat verbatim. And
Wow.
I found out that she was selling it. And I was like, nope, we're not doing this. I'm not playing games with this. This is my intellectual property. This is
Right.
my asset.
Right.
But if I didn't have the right legal protections in place, then I'm not really able to pursue that and make sure that my intellectual property is being taken care of.
Right. Yeah. Yes. And so when you say having a financial and legal team, I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong here, these aren't necessarily full-time employees. These are usually people like you have a lawyer who you tell me how you would recommend this setup for people who are like, how do I get a team like that?
Yeah. This is a stage where I have an agreement with my lawyer. I'm on retainer. That way I can ask questions and get feedback and they review all the things, all the terms and conditions, all the agreements. Please stop swiping agreements from your friends. That will not protect you. If this is a pet peeve of mine when I see people in like a group and they're like, anybody have an agreement for an independent contractor or VA? I'm like, please don't use the thing you took off the internet because it might not hold up. And if it won't hold up, then it's worthless.
Right.
So we need to have a lawyer on call. And luckily, there's a lot of lawyers who, because of honestly this explosion in small businesses coming into the world, there's a lot of people now who are like, yeah, I'm on retainer. You pay me a flat rate for the year. Here's what you get for that. And it makes it really easy to work with them. Same thing with a great financial team. I have somebody who is a CPA, but he really serves as my CFO. Like I can go to him and we talk quarterly. He's set up all sorts of things in my business to make sure that I'm paying myself and taking advantage of all the different tax savings I can take advantage of,
Mhm.
making sure I'm structured correctly. I'm always surprised when I find people who are starting to make money in their business and they're still operating under like a sole proprietorship, a DBA. They've never actually gone out and set up an LLC, or they might even need to restructure as an LLC filing as an S corp.
Yep.
And if those things are over your head and you're hearing me say those and you're like, what is she talking about? These are legal ways that you can protect yourself so that if somebody, let's say you have a client who's upset and they decide to sue you, if you are not set up as a LLC or some corporate structure, they can go after your personal assets, which includes your house, your retirement savings, your investments. But if you set up the right structure, then it protects your personal assets. And that's really important.
Right.
If you don't have the right tax set up, then you are likely paying way more in taxes than you need to. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that we can be doing that minimize how, because small business owners pay a lot in taxes.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. But you can pay yourself in different ways that will make it more lucrative for you. And then you're not having such a huge tax bill at the end of the year. But
Right.
you
Yeah.
never know if you don't get the right people on the team. And again, this is the mindset thing. You have to be willing to just ask questions and not feel like, oh, I feel so embarrassed that I don't, you're not a CPA, you're not a lawyer. Just ask the questions like, hey, I don't understand this. Can you explain it to me? Because
And
when we
honestly,
don't,
I've never had anybody judge me for asking the question. In fact, usually when I ask questions,
yeah,
my fancy CPAs and lawyers and everybody are just like, wow, that was like, most people don't ask questions like this.
yep.
I'm really impressed. And I'm like, oh, because basically I just told you that I'm ignorant about this and you're impressed. So that's a good lesson for me to like just ask the question.
Yeah, I find that there's a lot of, especially for women, it comes back to that whole good girl syndrome, right? We just feel like, well, they're the expert. I shouldn't question anything. I should just go along with it. But
Right.
if we aren't going to question things, then we won't really understand if we're getting a good answer, if it's the right strategy. Um, I've even found, I mean, so many times I've talked to women. I have several clients who come to me and they're like, we start talking about their financials, we start looking at their P&Ls, and they're like, well, I don't understand this and I don't understand that. I'm like, have you talked to your CPA? Oh, they're not very proactive. I only really talk to them once a year. And I'm like,
Get a new
uh,
one.
get a new one because these are people you should be in constant communication with,
Yeah.
especially around big decisions in your business, especially when you're looking at hiring someone, especially when you're looking at a big investment into your business.
Yeah.
Um, we
And
need to have those people.
what's so interesting to me too is that oftentimes in order to pay yourself more, sometimes you don't even have to have your business revenue grow. It's just
Yep.
restructuring the way that things happen. And I mean, I am a big fan of profit first. And
Yes, me too. Super fan.
and I have friends who, like this past year, one of my really good friends, she was in debt. She had no idea, like, it was like, I don't know if my business is going to make it. And she started working with a profit first coach. And lo and behold, without her business making any more money than it's ever been, she got out of debt. She's paying herself more. She's putting more in save. Like she didn't even need more money. She just needed to do things differently with the money that she had. And it was amazing to see the results that came from just doing things differently.
And I think this is so important for women to understand. Um, and again, this is why we need to just have more money conversations about understanding how these things work. Because statistically, there's something like 45% of us are the breadwinners for our families.
Mm-hmm.
So our ability to go out there and pay ourselves really well directly impacts whether or not you're going to have to take out a loan for your kid to go to college or if you're going to be able to make sure they graduate debt free.
Yeah.
Whether you're able to go buy the house you want to buy, or if you're going to have to do something smaller because you're not able to show that you make enough money to buy that house.
Right. On the flip side, though, I do just want to say a lot of people listening might be brand new to business. Maybe you've not even made
Sure.
$1,000 yet. Do not rush to go out and file as an LLC or an S corp. Like, have somebody that you can talk to about these things. But I do see people like the first step that they want to do before they even like publish their first blog post is file an LLC. And I'm like, kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit there.
Yeah, I agree. Some of these things, um, I tend to see this with people who are super conservative and cautious financially in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
Like they're very risk adverse.
For sure.
And I would say for those of you who are risk adverse, me too. Hi. I don't want to lose anything that I'm creating or building or saving for. Um, that said, I do think when you're first getting started, your biggest priority just has to be not only making that first $1,000, but putting yourself out there. Because what I tend to see happen is We get started and we'll use all these things to play like we're doing business, but we
Yes.
aren't actually doing business. So how
Yes.
does this show up? When I started my business, this showed up. I was talking to people and they're like, I'm getting the perfect logo. I'm working on my branding. I'm
I'm getting
getting,
certified in some extra training of
I'm,
something that's
yeah,
totally unnecessary.
I'm taking all these online courses. I've signed up for this extra certification. And all of those are things, cool. Those will all come in time, but those are not actual barriers to getting your first client or your first 10 clients.
Totally. Yeah,
And
I'm tinkering with my website. My sidebar isn't perfect yet.
yeah, you
Who
don't even need a
cares?
website to get your first 10 clients. Just to be clear, like, and I have seen this over and over again. I know people who've gotten their first 10 clients, they have no online presence, they have nothing. You know what they have? They have their email, they have their phone, and they're willing to use those two things to start getting in touch with people and saying, hey, here's what I'm offering. Can I help you? Or do you know someone I can help?
Yeah.
And that is such a simple first step. But like, I have a client right now. I just recorded an interview that went live on my podcast. And she came to me. She's lost her business in a divorce, starting completely over in her 50s. And she came to me and she's like, I know what I want to do. I know what I want to offer. I have no audience. I don't really know the first steps. And she had 30 years of experience in corporate. She had a great network to tap into. So I was like, you need to tap into that existing network, because if they aren't the perfect client, they will know the perfect client.
Yes.
Just start talking with them. So she started using her LinkedIn profile, which previously she had never really thought about. But she said the minute she changed her description on her LinkedIn profile and then started posting, she started using her LinkedIn like a blog.
Mhm.
She started posting content on there and talking about what her topic was, what her expertise is. She instantly started having a point of connection and conversation with people who became clients. And in 6 weeks, she made over $100,000 in booked revenue
Wow.
just by starting to tap into the people she already knew.
And the cool thing about that is that, like you said, the people that you already know, they want to help you. They want to
Yeah.
see you succeed. So even if they're not right for whatever it is that you're offering, they're more likely to say, this doesn't fit for me, but I know somebody who would be perfect for this.
And I think this is where I think a lot of people are nervous because we've all had the direct message from Facebook from someone we went to high school with. Who's like, hey, girlfriend, I want to let you know what I'm up to these days. Do you want to have coffee? And then they're going to talk to you about, you
They're
know, the MLM that they've joined. There are better ways to do that for sure. But I think that's what turns a lot of people off. They're like, I don't want to pitch to my family and friends. And I'm like, no, no, no. You're not pitching to your family and friends. You're not pitching to your network. You are letting them know what you're up to.
right.
If you would send these people a Christmas card, if you would invite them to your wedding, if they would to get a baby announcement, why would you not tell them about this exciting new thing in your life, which is a new business that you are launching? And
Right.
here's how they can support you. They can connect you with people who might be a good fit for what you are doing. They can introduce you to people who could be great collaborators or great JV partners.
Mhm.
Those are things that they're happy to do because they want to help. Often, like 9 times out of 10, they want to help if you tell them the most effective way to help you.
Yeah. One thing that's coming up for me too as we're talking is that, a lot of the reason that we're doing the busy work to make us feel like we're working, but we're not actually showing up. I think a lot of it does come down to not feeling safe to show up, not feeling
Yep.
confident to show up. And so I mean, there is some aspect of like sometimes you just gotta grit your teeth and bear it and just power through. But I also think, and this goes back to patriarchy stress disorder that you mentioned, like there's healing to be done and there's things that you can do to take care of yourself, to heal your central nervous system, to heal any trauma that you have, whether
Oh,
it's
yeah.
big T or little t. And that's really important too, that it's not just like, just do it anyway, do it scared. Like there is some of that, but I think it needs to go hand in hand with like, figure out what, tune in. Why is it why don't you feel safe? Why do you feel afraid to be seen or to talk to your friends and family even about your business?
Yeah. And I think this is one of those things where, it's baby steps. It's the practice. If you are feeling scared to even send that email, to even make that call, um, then we need to just take a little bit at a time, remind ourselves that these people generally want the best for you.
Right.
None of us start our business and then jump on to like a TED Talk stage immediately.
Right.
Like generally, we're all working our way up to that.
Yes.
And reaching out to people does feel scary. Posting things for the first time on social media, it absolutely can feel scary. I tend to be just rip the band-aid off type of person. Like, let's just do it. And what is my incentive for doing it aside that they might actually say yes? I'm totally not above bribing myself. I'm gonna be honest. If there's something I'm resisting, I will think about, is there something I really want that I want to do or experience or have, whatever. And I will make that my goal. Like when I do these 100 emails out to people in my network, that is a big deal. It feels a little scary to me. When I finish that, I am going to book myself a massage and a facial.
Yeah.
And then I
And it's
just stay
about the
focused on
doing
it.
that you're rewarding yourself for. It's not the result of what happened. It's not that you got 10 clients, it's that you
Yeah,
pitched 100 people.
exactly. So I use bribing myself quite a lot.
I love it.
Sometimes when I'm in resistance or avoidance about something, um, it works. It works for me.
Yeah.
Also, this is where having an accountability partner or coach can be really helpful.
Right.
This is one thing I see with my clients in my inside the CEO collective. Like they're in small group masterminds, and they will cheer each other on, and it's that group camaraderie that really helps them break through like the internal resistance, because everybody else is like, you can do it, you've got it. So you've got these little cheerleaders in your pocket
Right.
really there to support you. And when you don't do it, they're like, okay, what's going on? How can we help you?
Yeah, totally. This is why I love like group coaching
Yeah,
programs and masterminds and things where there is this community element to it. So important. Okay,
absolutely.
one of the other things you mentioned, I know we're coming up on time here, so I want to make sure we get this in, is about hiring this support. And you mentioned like you really can't, it's not about productivity. Sometimes you just need an extra set of hands to
Yeah.
get things, moving forward. So, what do you say to women who maybe they've even hit the six figures, but they're like, I don't have any extra money. How am I going to pay for this support?
Yeah, we got to shift the mindset there from I don't have the money right now to if I hire this person, how much time does that free up? And where am I going to put that in revenue generating tasks? And I
Mhm.
think about this support on my business team and support in my home support team. So when I started my business, I knew that I would need support at home, that I would need help. Also, I had twins about a year and a half after I started my business. So I got pregnant
Oh,
like really soon after,
bless
and then
you.
surprise, twins. So I knew I would need support. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to have a babysitter come here 3 mornings a week, and it's going to cost me $200 a week, $250 a week, whatever it was, what do I need to be doing to make sure I can make that money? So it turned out it was only like one client. I needed one client in order to pay for having a babysitter.
Right.
Cool. That was easy for me. I could go after and do that. Same thing with hiring people in your business. Like sometimes there's investments you want to make, whether it's someone on your team. I know there have been times where I'm like, oh, I really want to work with this coach, like who has a specific expertise that I wanted. I really want to hire this one person to work on this project. And I just looked at it and say, okay, it's going to cost me $5,000 or $10,000. How many clients do I need to get? How many things do I need to sell in order to do that?
Mhm.
If it's someone on my team that's going to be an ongoing expense, then I literally like, okay, how many more clients do I need in order to cover that? And then I stay focused on client generation, like on getting people in the door and selling. And often it's not necessarily that it's going to take a ton more time, it's just more dedicated time.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay. Love it. Rachel, this has been such a good conversation. I could talk to you forever. We'll have to have you back on another time. So, in the meantime, where can everybody find you and learn more about what you're up to?
Yes, my favorite place to hang out online is Instagram. So if you enjoyed this conversation, I would love to hear from you. Take a quick screenshot of your podcast app and share it on your Instagram stories. Tag me at Racheal.cook, tag Kate. Let us know what your biggest aha or insight was, and I'd love to hear more. And you can also find me on my website, rachealcook.com. And I've put together a special incentive for you to come check me out. I have a business growth checklist. No matter where you are in this business journey, there are certain things that you probably want to make sure you have in place infrastructure wise so that it is sustainable and scalable. And you can find that at rachealcook.com/SWS.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Kate.